Welcome back to Between the Levees. I'm joined today by Mr. Scott Jackson. He grew up in Indiana and moved to Missouri. Has been encountering the rivers his whole life, very interested in them. And he ran across a previous guest some years ago and has since started in the industry in 2021, moved from the inland rivers to the East Coast. We're going to get more into that. I believe a few of his friends had asked him to try and get on the show, so I'm glad we could make this happen. Scott, welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell me, I guess, your life story, how you got introduced to rivers, how you found your way into the industry, and of course, our friend Kyle Pfenning and his YouTube channel.
Well, honestly, I grew up around creeks and rivers and my whole life. To be honest with you, I was born in Indiana, and of course, I always was an outdoorsman. I love fishing and just being outside and around the water. And grew up around the creeks up around Indiana, the Wabash River. And of course, when I was 12 years old, moved down to southeast Missouri. I was actually the first time I actually seen the big river, the Mississippi River. And just watched the first time I seen a towboat was actually crossing the Cairo Bridge there out in Cairo, Illinois, on my way to Missouri. And was just always just fascinated by them and how big of important they are to our economy, and just how important they are as well as to the workforce, not just the economy, but also the workforce as well. Provide a lot of jobs, especially around where I live at. There ain't a lot of jobs around, so a lot of people come work on the boats here in northeast Arkansas, for instance. Just always, like I said, always enjoyed them, and really enjoyed a lot of the history as well. A lot of them. That was another kind of a thing that always attracted me, all from back in the steamboat days to what we have now, and some of these boats that still operating today that's been around quite a while, and a lot of me to me that's pretty fascinating to me.
Tell me about growing up in Indiana.
Well, I was born in Brazil, Indiana, which is not far from Terre Haute, and grew up in a small county called Park County, which is pretty famous for all the covered bridges. Has most covered bridges in any other county in the United States. We got a lot of creeks around there, and of course, like little ways off the Wabash. Also, the Wabash River is not too far from there as well. So I grew up along the Wabash. Always with my used to go with my dad a lot. We used to do a lot of fishing and run trout lines and stuff along the Wabash, and it really wasn't bad. I mean, to tell the truth, it was a small country community. Not a lot of industrial where I grew up. I mean, mostly it was farmland and rural area.
What about that move to Missouri?
Well, my parents divorced, and I made the move to Missouri with my mom. Decided to come down to southeast Missouri. Grew up in a little town of Clarkton, Missouri, which is not far from New Madrid, and spent a lot of time in New Madrid actually because the river kind of drew me there. Going over there to the riverfront, watching the river boats. Had some many good friends over in New Madrid as well growing up too. One good friend of mine in particular still lives in New Madrid this day. But anyway, it was pretty much the same, though. The small little town I grew up there as well, pretty rural, all farm ran. Not a lot to do except go to school and come home and eat, and, repeat the same cycle, as you do, I guess in a normal small town, But that was basically Missouri. It was just small and rural living.
What did your parents do for a living?
Well, my mom, she works at the school, the local school. She's actually still works to this day. She works for Campbell Schools. She works in the cafeterias and lunch rate, and in my lunch rating. I'm sorry. And then my stepdad was a paramedic growing up. He worked in EMS, and he's also currently working in dispatch. So he's always worked in the emergency services. My real dad, always was a factory worker. He always usually worked in a factory, always worked, So I can't really complain. I still have connections with both my parents, and I'm really proud of how they raised me.
Well, of course, fill me in on what spurred your career along. Of course, you said you found some videos on YouTube on the Mark Twain channel with Captain Kyle. You mentioned that in some previous conversations we had. Fill me in on how you found that and how much you've watched of his stuff.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I was actually scrolling through YouTube and just kind of scrolling through, looking at river, trying to basically find like river current, videos explain river current because I was actually trying to do research for fishing now, believe it or not. And I actually stumbled across one of his videos and I clicked on it, and sure enough, I'm sitting here. First I was, watching these videos about the river, basically setting out, good spots to put trout lines out. And then next thing you know, it went from that to watching this guy, steer this towboat with all these barges. And I was like, you know what? I said, that's just amazing how that works, and I continued watching it, and he slowly explained more and more in the video what's going on. And I just thought in my head, I want to try that. I actually want to try it. I want to give that a try and see where it goes. And to this day, I tell everybody I really glad that I stumbled across that video because that was one of the best things that ever happened to me career wise is working on a boat because there's just so many advantages to go from working on a boat. And the possibilities are really endless in this career.
Well, fill me in on, I guess, on school, finishing up school, and what your journey was to get into the industry.
Well, I didn't go to school. I I actually applied for inland marine for a friend of mine, a mutual friend of mine, gave me some information for inland marine. I applied and I got the job. And I started, to be honest with you, I started about this time in 2021. I still remember the first hits pretty well. I actually ended up catching a boat there at Wood River, just right above St. Louis, the cooperative manor, to be honest with you. And it was a heck of an experience because here I am, green as can be, and they're putting me in the middle of winter on the Illinois River. So that was a heck of an experience, to be honest with you. But it taught me a lot, and it actually kind of me opened up, from watching them videos to seeing it in real life. It's two different things. It's like day and night. And actually get me an experience of that from working, from doing the 6 hour watches. That took a little while to get used to. I think it would for anybody. And I did it, and I actually learned pretty much from everything that I learned from decking from hands on.
Well, fill me in on that first trip on the Illinois, man. How was it stepping out on deck for the first time? What was the training process for you? And fill me in on life out there.
Oh yes, sir. Well, that first hit was very, very, like I said, eye opening for me. I actually I remember going to Paducah, staying in a hotel room, and the crew van coming to get me that morning. And I didn't know what I was, getting into. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go work on a boat. I think I was probably thinking of anybody else that's brand new to the industry, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go work on a boat. And just live the boat life and be fine. No, I get on there. I get up there at Wood River, and they, of course, they have a little crew rounds up there. You sit in waiting for the crew boat, to take you to the boat. I went in there, and it was cold. I'll never forget going down that steep hill, and all this. There was snow on the ground, and we had all our baggages, and there was literally bags scooting down the hill from the snow and ice. And anyway, I remember I got in the crew boat, and I was in shock when we first got off the boat because I didn't realize, how big these boats really were until you get up close to them. I mean, I was like, is that really the boat? I was like, that thing looked so small, from the bank. I got on there and we got in the galley, and there's a cooperative manor. It was my first boat. Beautiful boat. Beautiful boat. It was painted, one of the art tow boats was painted in inland colors. Get in there in the galley, and I get with the mate. The mate was actually with us on the crew chains, and had a really good mate. I ain't gonna mention names, but he was a really, really good mate. I got lucky. I got a really good first time. The first mate I ever had, really good, and I still praise him to this day. And he sold me my room, and that was the first boat, and by the way, on the only boat I've ever rode that actually had satellite TV in the room for a deckhand. So I think I did good for my first boat. Anyway, I remember my first watch. I got up. He came, of course, they came in doing me a 30-minute wake up. I got up, got dressed, and basically, of course, had a rundown of all the rules, and of course, the safety. Safety's real big. I believe it is, especially in some of the things I've seen and everything. Safety is real big. And then, of course, the captain was really concerned about us going on tow really at first because of all the snow and ice while we was underway, because it was pretty hefty when we went up to. And I remember the first trip we went to Havana. That was as far as up we went. We went to Jack Tanner Towing, did tow work there. We dropped off. They restricted us down to 6. We dropped off a 6-pack at Jack Tanner Towing, picked up 6 empties, and went back to St. Louis. And then the second time, they actually let us go to Peoria. And we went up there to the Art Cove in Peoria. Same thing, 6-pack, and then 6 back to St. Louis. And that was the first time, of course, making rocks and all, everything. I mean, and it was an experience. And like I said, I had a really good mate that was real patient, that taught me a lot that trip. I mean, of course, being out there in the snow and ice, you can only do so much, as far as, just take your time, basically. And, I mean, if anybody's been out there on barges and ice and snow, they, know what I'm talking about. But that was basically my first trip. It was actually a really good first trip.
What was one of the most surprising things you saw out there that first trip?
Probably the most surprising things I've seen was basically how the couplings, how the wires were made. Because I focused on all this stuff, I was fascinated by it, honestly. I mean, and I wanted to learn, everything I could, possibly. I knew I couldn't learn it all at once, but I wanted to, learn as much as I could. And I was mostly fascinated about how the wires, especially in ice, you had to go out there and how quick they freeze. I mean, you go out there and you bust them things open, and you go out there an hour later or 2 hours later, and it's frozen solid again. I mean, that was probably one of the most impressive things I've seen that trip. That and probably the going in a rock the first time. I remember the first rock I made was I want to say, I think it was Chain of Rocks, if I remember correct. That was the first one I made on my watch, if I remember correct.
And I know you made a couple of career drums, I think, but any good stories come to mind from your time out there on boats and barges?
All kinds of them, to be honest with you. One of the most probably the greatest thing of working on the inland rivers is the friendships that I built with people. I've met so many good people, worked with so many good people, and met a lot of good guys. At the fleet. My most majority worked was a rower guy, so I worked on the rower a lot in big tows, and I've had some crazy times. I've seen some. I think we all have, though. I think, as far as being towboats on the water, I was involved in, we hit a bridge one time on the Tennessee River, and that was actually my second hit. And I'll never forget that. Working 18 hours straight, we built tow and being tired as can be. And yeah, but it didn't stop me, though. A lot of that stuff, I think it made me better, to be honest with you, from learning the experience, going through that, and, seeing it firsthand. And I believe sometimes, the bad makes you better because you can be more prepared for it next time.
Walk me through, if you can, that bridge strike experience. Where were you on the vessel when it happened? And then I guess just walk me through the experience. You said 18 hours out on deck rebuilding tow. So fill me in.
Yeah, we had 15 barges working the Tennessee River, and I was on a vessel working for Inman at the time, second ever hits ever. It's on the Bobby Thompson, old Nashville bridge boat built in 1969, and we was there to hit the new Johnsonville Bridge, and I was actually in bed. I was sleeping good. I'll never forget it. I was sleeping good. And next thing you know, I was on the floor, and of course, I opened up my window because my little room had a window with a little brine. I opened up that brine. All I remember was seeing barges going everywhere, and I was like, "Oh no, this ain't good." Now I knew it was time to go to work, so I got ahead and just got dressed and threw on a work vest, and met with the guys in the deck rocker. We had a little deck rocker on that little boat, real bitty little deck rocker, and they were in there, and of course, I had the door shut and everything, and I had to knock and get in there, real crowded, real tight space, find out what was going on. And we went up to the wheelhouse, but yeah, we after that we basically got everybody up, and let's just say we got 14 barges back out of our 15. One was loaded with soybeans. I remember that, and it got stuck in a mud slap, and they had to bring a crane from Waterfront Services all the way over from Cairo over there to unload that barge, and they told us just to go ahead and leave it and go off because we was heading to Gunnersville, is where it was heading. But yeah, I remember that pretty well. I actually still have a piece of that bridge today. I've actually sold a lot of people that. It was out there on the head of tow, and my boy actually has the jackstaff flag that we had in front of the tow in his room.
Very cool, man. I'm good. So you rescued almost all the barges. You mentioned you were very impressed with that mate, but was that mate on your second trip too, or just that first one?
He was just on the first one, sir. His regular boat was the Cooperative Manor, I believe. I think during that time it was. I don't know if he's still with Inland or not. I haven't talked to him in a while, but no, sir. We had I got lucky on that first hitch. I was working on that Cooperative Manor. And then Inland, of course, they move you around boats a lot. You don't really have a permanent boat unless you are made over there. So I got thrown around after that to all the TBT boats. And then I worked there until basically Inland lost the TBT boats. And then I basically took a layoff when TBT decided to take back not really take back their boats. But there was in the process of when then things started slowing down for them at that time. And then that's when I went to Western Rivers.
Well, fill me in on your time with Western Rivers.
Western Rivers, I worked there a year. I worked there over a year, actually. I worked there for Mr. Jason, and I really liked it there. I really did. I really liked it there. My first boat there was the Captain Johnny Coe. And I rode that boat many times when I was with Western Rivers with old Captain Spanky. And I have a lot of great respect to Captain Spanky still to this day. And even when I was on the river, when I worked for Marquette and other companies, every time I seen Captain Johnny Coe, I knew Spanky was on there because that man hardly never goes home. And I would always wave at him. He would wave back, or he would holler at me on the radio, or honk his horn or something, because that man, like I said, he's a darn good captain. Probably one of the best captains I rode with, far as, for a long period of time. And good crew on that boat. Matter of fact, the mate on that boat, he's actually, I talked to him the other day. Matter of fact, he's actually in the process of becoming the chief engineer now. So it's just a really good boat. Like I said, I also rode a lot of their bigger boats over there. I rode the Charles. I rode the River Addison. I rode, the Stone Strait. And I rode a lot of them over there with Western. And I liked Western. One reason I liked Western too is because they have a lot of the older boats, and they have quite a big history and darn good boats. I mean, darn good boats, and definitely old school rigging.
Any good stories coming to mind from any trips with them?
A few. I remember that's when I actually started getting readership and learning how to run a watch, and that's when I really started deciding that, hey, I want to make this is my career, when I was there. And I remember one trip particular was back on the Johnny Coe, and the mate on there, who's actually a really good friend of mine, the same one that's becoming the chief engineer. He actually helped me a lot to succeed to becoming a mate. And I still to this day, like I said, I have great respect for that man. I mean, hopefully if he watches this video, sees this, he'll know what I'm talking about. And he, like I said, he actually pushed me a lot too, and he knew how to push me. And I think that's one reason why we kind of butted heads, but we didn't butt heads kind of like what a lot of people thought this butt heads work right, because he knew how to push me, and he knew what I could do, but I couldn't see it, and he helped me bring that out, And I remember, I'm trying to sit here and think of any other crazy trips or anything. Nothing really crazy too happened at Western. We mostly like all the rower boats I was on. They were actually pretty good, really good trips, to be honest with you. Of course, water rigging. I remember all them rigging slops down in the hole.
What was that run you were on? You said all the way down to the hole?
Yes, sir. I was on the like I said, when I worked at Western, I was mostly on the rower boats. So we'd run from St. Louis to New Orleans, and then the Johnny Coe, though, we was on the rock run with it. We we'd run right there at Smithland on the Cumberland, and then usually go down to Angola, and then turn and burn out at Angola and back up to the rock quarry up there in Kentucky.
And what's some of the craziest things you've seen out there?
On the river, man, oh goodness, I've seen all kinds of crazy things. To be honest with you, probably, like I said, I tell everybody this, and people probably look at me like I'm crazy, but I've actually seen some of the best fights of my life on a towboat. You know, down the hole, watching them freak guys. I've seen some of them freak guys actually knock crap out of each other. You know, but that's their business, not mine. I'll just turn away, you know, and grab a ratchet or something and go to the next couple. You know, but as far as, you know, like that crazy anything I've seen, you know, I've seen thousands of Asian carp, which them things were getting horrible. I mean, really, I mean, that's probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen with those, and involving those was probably probably at, I would have to say probably at Kentucky Lock. I mean, they're just so horrible right there in that general area. But far as anything crazy or anything, that's really about it, really.
Well, what prompted your move to a company on the East Coast?
Well, I always wanted to go offshore, and I really, like I said, I really enjoyed the river. I'll never forget the river. That's where I come from, you know, and I'm very proud to come from the river. That's one reason why I wanted to do this interview, you know, and a lot of people kind of asked me to. And I was like, look, you know, I had an opportunity to kind of follow my rap. I had a friend of mine. He actually never worked on a towboat. He always worked offshore. And he gave me my boss's phone number that I have now, his number. Hey, he's like, hey, this guy's looking for somebody down in Port Canaveral, Florida. And I'm like, dude, what? And I thought it was a joke. I was like, there ain't no way, you know, ain't no way I'm gonna be working down there in Florida, you know. Sure enough, I called the guy, and he wanted me to give me my social security card and take a picture of my driver's license, and book me a flight. So, I mean, there I am. I'm working for a small company out of South Carolina now called KMD.
Well, what's the job out there? I know very little about anything offshore. And
Well,
you did mention too, I think, a trip to Bermuda for some work. So fill me in on all that stuff.
all right, yeah, I started back with KMD Marine. They're out of Sullivan's Island, South Carolina. We're basically Charleston in June. And we started first working a job in Port Canaveral, Florida. That's where I actually caught my boat at, was down there at Port Canaveral. I flew to Orlando, and my boss got me a rental and put me on a tugboat, and it's like, hey, you go to do some dredge work, because they were dredging down there. Norfolk dredging out of Norfolk, Virginia was dredging down in Port Canaveral. So I was down there for about a month helping them guys out and dredge. They had a bucket dredge down there, 2 bucket dredges with sculls, and we was working them. Then we went back to our yard, and we got a phone call from our boss when we was back in our yard, saying, hey, we got a job, a very interesting job. And this is exactly how he put it. It was kind of funny. He was like, you guys are going to enjoy this job. And was like, why is that? He said, it's basically just a paid fishing trip. And we were like, dude, what? So, of course, the next day our boss came, and there was just people from the government that was with my boss. And they sit down with us. We had to sign some papers, so I can't really tell you exactly what we were doing, because there were some papers involved with the government. We went, but anyway, the job, we went 450 miles offshore, very close to the coast of Bermuda. Well, actually, we're close enough where you can actually see Bermuda from the boat if you look in binoculars. And we went out there. We was out there for 3.5 weeks, and we was basically playing with the Navy. They were testing out some equipment, and they wanted us there to basically play cat and mouse. And it was very exciting. I'm not gonna lie, it was very interesting. Probably one of the coolest jobs I ever done. But also it was very boring, though, to be honest with you, though, too, being out there. I mean, it was, but of course, that was my first time ever, though, being offshore like that. I mean, literally, we was out there for 3.5 weeks where pretty much all you could see is water. So, you know, very, very different environment to what I came from. I came from the river. Here I am, a Midwest boy, going all the way to the East Coast, working out in the ocean. Didn't know what to expect. It didn't get rough though. Beautiful weather the whole time we were out there. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I've never seen the ocean that blue. To be honest, I've never seen water that blue. To be honest with you, in all. But that was my basically experience out there. It was a really cool job too. I mean, I got to see some cool stuff that I didn't know was around. Plus, I didn't know really what I was getting into, either. I mean, I was signing these papers, and here they are. And then they had this government contractor, that was out there with us and stuff. We actually had a guy on the boat that was with that company to, watch us and everything and help us with the job. It's pretty interesting, though.
Any good memories you can share from time out there, 3.5 weeks at sea?
Probably my favorite memories were we did a lot of trawling because we did bring a lot of trawling gear, fishing gear. So we did get to trolley a lot, and we actually caught a couple mollies that was out underway, and barracuda. We actually caught a barracuda, which was very lucky because most of them little teepee guys, chew for the line. But luckily, we had a steel beater, so we got lucky with that. And also, I had some amazing moments where I was seeing the sunrises and sunsets. I mean, sunrises and sunsets are beautiful from the river. I don't want to offend anybody or anything, but when you see them out there like that, when there ain't no trees or nothing in the way, it's absolutely, it's like, wow. I mean, it's crazy, but that's because I spent a lot of time outside. And also I got to see I actually got pictures of them on my phone, which was pretty neat. I got to see the SpaceX train. I'm very query from being offshore because, of course, there ain't no right pollution offshore. So that was kind of cool.
Well, I don't think I've had any dredge workers on the show before. Tell me what life is on a dredge down there off the coast of Florida.
Well, dredge work's not bad. Of course, we were bucket dredging. Of course, we weren't doing the dredge operation. We were just assisting them with a boat. Um, Bucket dredges, though, basically just have a big cram sail bucket on a crane, going down digging, and they have sculls, which are just basically, I don't know if you know what a scull barge is or not. A scull barge is basically it looks like a normal barge, but only it's like, okay, it's kind of like an ATB barge. I know you probably know what an ATB is, but only it don't have the V-back, but it's about the same size as that, and it's just like a giant sand barge. But what's cool about them is a skull barge will actually opens up in the middle, so it'll actually like open up like that, and it'll dump the material, when it gets towed off, so many miles offshore, wherever they dump it at. But what we were doing, we were just changing out skulls for them. So we weren't dumping, we weren't doing the towing. It was actually a Marquette offshore tug, the Miss Emery, that was doing the towing, and one of the Atlantic Gulf tugs that was doing the towing. And we had us and gosh darn, I can't even remember the other boat's name. There was another Atlantic Gulf tug. We was doing the assist because we was working the Virginia and the Baltimore. That was the name of the dredges. And it wasn't bad work, though. Very easy work. A whole lot easier on your back, if you know what I'm saying, than the river, to be honest with you. I mean, basically, you just throw lines, catch a line here, catch a line there, catch a line there. That's basically it. And then we're actually in the process of doing dredge work now. I'm actually home, and I got to go back, matter of fact, to work this coming Wednesday. But we're actually doing dredge work up in Morehead City, North Carolina, and they're actually using a head dredge, which is basically the same kind of dredges they use on the river. So he'll be with a pipeline, of course, so it'll be a whole lot easier than a bucket dredge.
Well, you mentioned too in our conversation we had that you had a trip all the way up the East Coast, I think, to Maine.
Yes.
What was that about?
Yes, I actually did. Well, that was just a couple months ago. We had a barge that we had in Charleston. It actually came. This is actually kind of a cool story because this is actually really right up your alley, right up everybody's alley in the industry. Because I'm actually kind of curious about this myself. But anyway, we had a barge. The barge name was Endeavor. It was a small. I think it was like 100. I want to say 180, 190 foot barge. It was a flat deck barge. and we took it up to Portland, Maine, from Charleston. Beautiful trip, awesome trip. That was the first time I ever been up that far, and just like I said, absolutely amazing. I mean, to go up the whole East Coast. Well, we went up there to Portland, Maine. They loaded the barge for us. They loaded it with some refinery equipment. It's what it looked like to me. It looked like a couple burners and separators or whatever you want to call them. They loaded the barge. It took them. We got there on a Friday, and we sit up there all weekend. So we got to sit in Portland, Maine. They're right by the drawbridge, basically. Beautiful area too. Beautiful little town. And then we came back to Charleston, and L.A. Carrier's boat got the bar. Well, we actually went to Norfolk. I'm sorry, we got stuck in weather, so we had to stop in Norfolk, Virginia, and L.A. Carrier's the Captain Chase. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that boat. Probably a lot of people are, because I've seen it many times go up and down the river. But we actually caught up with the Captain Chase in Norfolk, Virginia. They go on the East Coast too, and they took the barge from us. And what I heard, this is when it gets interesting, because I heard that barge was going all the way down to the Gulf to New Orleans to actually get on the river, and actually was going to connect with a tow. And I'm not sure what tow it's from. That's why it's kind of in my head here, because they said it's going to connect with a tow. Because my captain told me this. He said, "You came from the river." He said, "I figured I'd tell you this." He said, "It's actually going to connect with a tow and actually go upriver some way." And I'm like, "Really?" I was like, "That's kind of cool." So it's kind of neat. So one of y'all might have, seen my barge that came all the way from Maine that we took up there and brought to Norfolk, and the Captain Chase brought to you guys.
Well, aside from maybe better views of sunrise and sunset and maybe a little bit lighter work, do you find that you prefer offshore work versus what you had in the river?
To be honest with you, that's a really good question. I like the river. I love the river because of the people and the work. The work made you better. And but offshore, I will have to say I like it, but man, I'm not gonna lie to you, it does suck when it's rough. We did a trip a couple months ago. Right before we did that trip to Maine, we went up to Norfolk and picked up an Army LCU and towed back to Charleston. And we went up to Cape Hatteras there, which is just below Norfolk, and we was hitting 10 to 12 foot seas. And I'll tell you what, that's not fun in a 90-foot boat.
I don't think 12-foot seas is fun in any boat, but
No.
any I guess any horror stories, any bad things coming to mind from the river and offshore?
Well, that is one thing that I'm really proud to say about the river. As the whole 3.5 years that I've worked on the river, I've never seen anybody get seriously hurt. I've seen people get little, cuts and bruises, but nobody severely hurt. I mean, I think we all have heard horror stories, and seen pictures, of course, with the social media and things like that. Luckily, I've never witnessed anything. Same with offshore. I'm hearing a lot of, stories about the towing cable of splitting people in half, and really hurting people and stuff, But like I said, knock on wood, I hope I never have to see anything like that, anything crazy like that. Hopefully, it's just something crazy with outside of the boat or outside of people, if you know what I'm saying.
I'm glad to hear that for sure. Tell me about that experience in 12-foot seas in a 90-foot boat.
Man, it was not fun. Yeah, it was not fun at all. We left Charleston. I actually caught the boat just that night, just that evening, I should say. I got on the boat because my company, they fly me out there and they fly me home, and I just got on the boat. It was about 6. We was taking on fuel, and we was told that, hey, it's gonna be rough. They're calling 10 to 12 foot seas offshore. And we can already tell it was going to be rough because Charleston Harbor was having swells, even inland, past the jetties. It was having swells past the jetties. I was like, this is not looking good. And we was almost this close to just calling it out to wait it out. But being right boat, and I have a really good captain on the Marie Claire. That's the name of my boat, the MV Marie Claire. It used to be the old Captain Bud for United Tugs. A lot of people might know it as that. But we uh we set out after we got fuel and we got past the jetties. And first it was all right. You know, our boat rides pretty well. I mean, when it's loaded down with fuel and water, it rides pretty well. Even in 4 or 5 footers, it's nothing to the boat. It's pretty calm. We got a little past Myrtle Beach, which was the next day up there, and it started getting a little iffy for it. Got a little sporty, and I'm not going to lie to you. That was the first time I ever experienced really, really rough seas. So, to me, it was a whole another experience, and I was like, I'm not going to get sick. Am I, going, what's going to happen, And luckily, I didn't get sick. That's one thing I've noticed. I don't get seasick. I actually went up to the wheelhouse. I actually got some cool videos on my phone and sit there and watched it. I watched our bow go underwater a couple of times, get hit and just stuff like that, and it was pretty fascinating, but it was also pretty miserable though too. It sucked because you couldn't hardly sleep, couldn't cook too well, so you had to eat sandwiches or something quick, quick to fix. And sleeping and mopping was almost impossible.
How's the work-life balance offshore compared to inland? Is it about the same as far as, time with family when you're home and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, I actually worked the same schedule I did when I worked on the river. I worked 28-14. Um, Here this past summer, I worked for a really small company. We only have 3 boats. One of our boats, some of y'all might know, we have the Opanka. It's a little push boat. We actually have one push boat in our fleet, the Opanka. And then we have the Marie Claire, which is my boat, which is the old Captain Bud for United Tugs. And then we have the gosh, I forgot our other boat's name. It's sad. I haven't seen it in so long. It's anyway, it's old Marquette tug. It's a little bitty old ironworks tug, real small, uncomfortable. But the schedule is the same. I worked 28-14, but this past summer, like I said, being a small company, I did work over a lot because we were shorthanded because the industry is really hurting for people. I mean, we all know that. And we get people, of course, they don't stick around and it really puts a hurt on all of us, as far as our schedule, really messes our schedules all up, And but far as this summer, like I said, we worked all those jobs I was talking about. But the biggest accomplishment we did that I helped stay over and helped did was while we had downtime, I helped paint our boat, which we really needed. So that right there was kind of, that was my choice though. That wasn't because I had to. That was because hey, somebody's got to do this. And I didn't want to feel like, do it in the wintertime, so I had to get it, got the job done. And then now that I did that, I kind of got a little, I got it all regulated out now that I work 28-14 because we got enough guys to do that now. So, I mean, I think though that's pretty much about everywhere right now though, really. I mean, as far as all the smaller companies go, I mean, really, I mean, I think that's not just an inland or offshore. I think that's just a small company thing.
Well, I know a little bit about the kind of career progression for tugboats in the river. How does it work offshore? Like, I guess what's next for you? What does your career progression look like?
Well, my career progression is I'm really trying to go into the engine room, and I told my boss that, and my chief engineer knows that as well. I have a really good chief engineer, and as far as that goes, is I'm going to hopefully in the next couple of months go try to get in some school to increase my basically my ability for marine engineering and go that route. That's my biggest goal. And I have a little experience. Some of you that might know me I have a little experience with marine engines, especially when I worked at Western Rivers. I actually ran over one time on the Charles. On that was so that was kind of a really that's what kind of really pursued me more going towards the engine room route and the wheelhouse route. Which right now offshore is a little different for the wheelhouse compared to the river. Like offshore, you have mates, you have a captain and a mate. When when inland in the rivers, you have a pilot and a captain. And a mate though, offshore mate though, is basically a pilot. And offshore tugs, they have what we call autopilot. can hit a button, the boat drives itself on course. Captain can go down, take a shower, make a sandwich, whatever he wants to do. I mean, it's pretty crazy, honestly. I mean, really, if you think about it. And sometimes, even as a deckhand on an offshore boat, you have to stand to watch up in the wheelhouse. Sometimes, I mean, if say the captain needs to take a shower, well, still there needs to be somebody up there in case somebody hollers on the radio or a ship goes by or whatever. So basically, you got to have a little experience of how things go in a wheelhouse and what to say, basic navigational skills, as far as a deckhand, even on offshore. And more than you need more of that than working offshore than you do, of course, working on the river.
Do you think you'll find yourself back on the river one day, possibly as an engineer, or are you enjoying this offshore life?
But to be honest with you, yes. I wouldn't mind to I possibly trip, when I get my engineering license and stuff and trip. Definitely. I mean, because I said again, I'm never going to forget where I came from. And a lot of people that know me know that I know a lot about these boats and have a huge passion for a lot of these boats. So yeah, absolutely. I would, more than likely come back to the river, and I just, to me, like I said, that's where I came from, and I'll never forget where I came from.
Well, Scott, I appreciate your time, man. I enjoy these last few days of time off, and we'll keep in touch. But good luck with everything.
Hey, sure, thank you.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.